Okay, we are going to get into another women's empowerment group. This is our third installment. We're going to start our meeting shortly. I'm very excited. This meeting's going to focus on serving others, serving our families, serving our community. So it's a powerful topic. We have a great guest. Her name is Katie. She's the founder of a group called Village. So can't wait to get it started. Here we go. Hey, Katie, how are you? Hey, hey, great. Crystal, are you there as well? Hey, terrific. So, Katie, I know that Crystal, I think, may be the only one who downloaded the Duo app. We usually do this on FaceTime, but we wanted to be able to join, allow our Android friends to join. So, Katie, I know you don't know our format, but way we kick off on this is we talk about something that we're working on just from a project standpoint, a large aspiration. We just kind of share where we're at with that, and after that we have a theme of the day and usually a guest. We've had a guest all three meetings this time, and our theme today is just really simple, just the power of service, the power of serving others, the power of serving our family and the community. So um, yeah, I'll kick off. I always like to at least boot up with what I'm working on, and yeah, I know Crystal's always got a bunch of stuff she's working on too. So um, anyway, so I am still working on closing out a project out in California that will allow our 22 plus adult diploma program to have a presence in Sacramento, California, serving roughly 3,000 people. um every time, I know Crystal's probably thinking like, this is three calls, Zach, you haven't closed that out. Yes, Crystal, I've not closed it out, not yet. um but very excited about the opportunity. It will allow us eventually to serve tens of thousands of people in that state that need a high school diploma, and some thoughts on taking next steps in their life. So very excited about that. Crystal, what are you working on? Making thousands of dollars, I'm sure, with Lash by Crystal B. But what's up? Yes, nice. So, Katie, just to give some context, we'll brag about Crystal for a second. So, she's a graduate of our program. She also has a chemical dependency counselor assistant certificate that she earned after she finished our program. She has a nice lash business that she started herself, bought all her own equipment, kind of earned all her customers through hard work. She's made a nice profit for herself so far. We're working on getting her a more, predictable customer base. And then Christ Hospital really thinks she's going to be a great worker and a great part of their team. So obviously the pandemics hindered that timeline a bit, but their head of HR, I know, is very excited to bring her on when the time comes when they can pull the trigger. So that's where she's at. But I really wish Kaylee Thomas could have joined the call. She has a huge, and not that Crystal doesn't, but she has a huge passion for serving the community, and especially I think men in the community that just need, I don't know, just a little extra push, a little extra incentive to reach their full potential. But nonetheless, Katie, and I hope you're not offended, this call is something we record, and not sure with everybody, but just the other group members. I really wanted her to meet you. So even if she can't in real time here, just via the recording. So anyway, that's Crystal. That's me. Katie, you're always working on a ton of stuff. What have you got up your sleeve? Hmm. 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 Right. Yeah. Right. Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Katie, thank you. Yeah, and I think probably Crystal's heard me say this because I think I've used every motivational thing with her, in our time together. But my team for 22 plus talks a lot about this. I think it's at least a phrase attributed to Zig Ziglar. He says, if you can help, if you're willing to help enough people achieve what they want, you can achieve anything that you want. Katie, talk to me a little bit about, and Crystal, this kind of pertains to you too, because Crystal talks about her lash business. She served X amount of kind of customers, but that repeat, that relationship is really what's helped her, build something fairly nice for herself. But talk to us a little bit about your approach to networking, because you have an interesting point here about that if you have a network, you probably won't ever go homeless. And I think that's very true. But like, how do you do that? How is that built? Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Hey, Crystal, why is it that you think people kind of loop back to what you do for them? You know, like what is it about what you're doing that makes them say, "Hey, I got to go to her again"? Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, and you're honest about what the outcome, the expected outcome could be, right? Yeah. Katie, I know you talk about building kind of like a familial relationship, and it's pretty interesting. Like, this is something that I didn't even think about, but it's so true. When the New York Giants football team was having a lot of success, a lot of people attributed it to their coach Tom Coughlin being very militant about things, but actually the framework he used is the same framework a mother would use to run a household, or just like from a common American standpoint. How does a successful mother that's kind of in charge of running a household run her house? Well, it's a predictable time schedule, it's doing things promptly, but where the outcome, this happens at this time, you will have a break at this time, like making it very structured. Do you like, how do you look at, I mean, he built trust because he looked at maybe some of the ideal ways people are raised. Like what are some of the things you do to build trust with the men or boys that you work with? Okay. Mm, mm, mm. That's a really interesting point, Katie, about kind of that omnipresent service initially. I think, I've heard it described as almost building a trust bridge. Like if you don't have a good bridge, initially it's just hard for that person to fully trust you. But once you've earned their trust and you've built kind of that sense of that's what they'll deliver, then it's okay to just be a little maybe firmer. Hey, this is not a good time. This is not a good day. Or, let's pick back up at some point. But that's a very, very good point. I think about just that initial kickoff where you're there and kind of going above and beyond. Very interesting. Tell me this. What have you noted? I know we talked about, or you just talked about in the early stages being very present. Um, but what has been the difference, or have you sensed the difference that you have a track record at large now? Are people telling other people, or are the kids that you're working with telling other kids, well, yeah, hey, you can go ahead and trust them. This is what they've done. Like, do you have a reputation you believe now? Hmm. 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 Yeah. Here's a question, and I know that different business models may kind of perceive this different, but obviously, like I think I'm just going to speak for us all. We want to deliver something that's of great value or perceived great value, whatever that is. But Katie, how do you? Because sometimes it's difficult to say, like, I know I'm delivering at this level of value. How do you feel comfortable approaching that though? Like, I mean, everybody, like Crystal is going to go directly to her client and ask for a certain amount of money in exchange for what she's doing. But like, how do you kind of justify to yourself so you can make that ask? And here's what I mean: if you feel like your service is valued at X, like how do you commit to yourself like that that's what you're going to start to ask for? Like how have you personally approached kind of valuing your own time and your own service? And like how have you kind of reconciled that in your mind? Because we often want to undervalue ourselves, I think. I know Crystal and I have talked about price point before, but like, how do you factor that in? Because we want to be service oriented and we want to bring value. Mhm, mhm, mm, mhm. Yeah, very important. You know, Katie, thank you. Yeah, I think that that's just it's very important. Some of the things that you're saying, especially about like not being so fixated on like lashes or just the the product, so to speak, just the overall walk away. Like, how are they feeling emotionally when they walk away? Do they feel educated? Do they feel like they have a relationship and valued, etc.? So I think those are great points. One thing I wanted to ask you is obviously everybody wants to kind of dial it up very quickly. Here's what I mean. Let's say, you were working and you were delivering one service extremely well. And the tendency tends to be, let's do 10 other things. Let's do all these diverse projects. How do you know when it's a good time to kind of add something in? Or what strategies have you used to say, hey, my service is working. I want to serve and do more things. Like, how do you judge when it's a good time to add, and how do you know when it's the right time to add for you without taking away from what you've had success with? Mhm. Right. Right. Hmm. Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Mhm. Mhm. Yep. Never mistake activity for productivity. I wouldn't. So yeah, no, totally hear you. Here's also, I think, maybe a common concern, right? Like, I know, Katie, you're very focused on serving people at a high level and making sure they feel valued and they get all the resources. There's pay from whoever's the person paying for all this. But like, do you ever get concerned that you're not being taken advantage of financially, but you're pouring a lot into people and they're just not like maybe they're just not receiving it the way you were hoping. Like they're not getting the value that you think you're putting into them. And how do you kind of deal with that? Just somebody that you're putting a lot of time, effort, and energy into, and you just don't see that growth. Mm, hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. No, Katie, I think you've kind of alluded to it. You're trying to get clear on the outcomes and you're trying to say this is the value you'll receive if you do X, Y, and Z, and you really make it a partnership. Crystal, this kind of spins back to you. We know that there's just difficult people in every walk of life, whether you're providing a service to them, whether you've brought them on as an employer, as a partner. I mean, people just sometimes have, like, even though you're giving them the best that you can give, whatever you're expecting from them just may not be there. So, just one takeaway, and I know everybody's kind of early in their game, is sometimes you have to fire the customer, unfortunately. Because if you trust in yourself, and this, Katie, is kind of a common theme, not only with Crystal, but with some of the other women in the group, just giving themselves permission to feel valuable, to feel like they're doing the best job possible. And if other people aren't seeing that value at that moment, I think Katie you've touched on it a few times, just kind of stating, hey, I don't think maybe we're aligned. This is what we need to do. And just feeling okay, like that most people don't feel like that. Most people, when you give them that much time and service and energy and effort, they're responding much differently. But I just know, in even my own personal experience, sometimes you work like crazy and you want a certain outcome to happen, and it just doesn't, and it's not always your fault. So, Katie, yes. Mhm, mhm, yeah. Mhm, mhm, mhm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Mm. That's very helpful, especially the reconciling when it's not, like when you can say, I put in that max effort, Katie. I think you really hit it well. And just not taking it as a personal failure, because anybody motivated enough to offer service to others typically takes it as a personal failure when things don't work out. And I think that that's a really good perspective. Here's something I'm going to ask really on behalf of Kayri, if not many others. One of her long-term objectives is, I think, to do something somewhat similar to you and really serve boys and men in the community that I think she's come across that she feels could just use some extra support to reach their full potential. How would you suggest someone get started, in taking on a mission like that? Obviously, you've done it not from scratch, but I mean, you've built something pretty significant over time. Like, how would you suggest to someone to get started on that, where it may not just be all volunteer? And what I mean by that is, a lot of people that want to serve obviously need to pay bills still. Like, would you have any advice for somebody to get started in this space? They want to contribute, but they also may want to do it in a way that helps them as well. Hmm. Mm. Okay. Hmm. Okay. Hmm. Wow. Hmm. Yeah. Mhm. Hmm. Nice. Yeah. Hmm. Very interesting. Very interesting. I think obviously a perspective from somebody who's done it. So, Carrie, when you watch this, there you go. I think Katie, you've talked a lot about kind of being very clear on what outcome, like what the partnership's going to look like in advance, trying to walk people through expectation and progression, etc. How do you measure effectiveness? Like, obviously, I'm sure that's changed over time, but like when you're approaching, and we'll look at it just on kind of the more macro scale, but like when you're approaching the impact that you want to have organizationally, okay, we'll just look at that. How do you quantify it? Do you try to quantify it? Like, how do you go about it? Because Crystal and I, just as context, are tried to measure like the unit value of the product she's using in her service, and then what would it cost to acquire a customer, and then what's that customer's lifetime value. So we were quantifying on that, and I know that that's just really looking at the quantum aspect of the business. It's not looking at the quality and how do you produce a repeat customer. But we've been talking a lot about the analytics side of it. I wondered what your approach is. Obviously, service, we think of it kind of like very measured by just feeling, but do you try to quantify your outcomes at all? Mm, mhm, mhm, mm, 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 yeah, yeah, uh, yeah, yeah, sure. Mm, mm, right. Hmm, yeah, 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 yeah. That's really good, Katie, because Crystal and myself are actually going to get together and not only build out the customer acquisition tools. We're using social media to do it, some like a little bit of paid marketing, but like what does that conversion funnel look like to get them from the first message to booking the appointment to the experience to the follow up to this to that. It's very interesting because she's doing lashes and you're helping young men change their life, shape their life, but having that repeatable process is only possible if you kind of know what you're doing. Hey, Katie, okay. No problem. Well, you've been very generous with your time, no doubt. No, well, I think that my biggest desire to have you on here, Katie, is I know you were very ambitious in building the village, and Crystal and Kaylee and Sydney and Bria are my women in this group. And I wanted them to see that whether it was serving in the community or building a business or whatever, all these had basically similar principles. And when you started with a service first mentality, everything else takes care of itself. I mean, probably without your husband, you wouldn't have thought like, oh, we need this type of data and we're going to make a repeatable process. But because of your willingness to serve and build a relationship with people, you get smarter with time. And I think you do. a great job with what you do. But I wanted Crystal to hear this and some of the others in the group because they are so eager to give of themselves, but I wanted them to do it in a really structured way, a really impactful way. And I wanted them to hear some of your philosophies and things that you did because I thought it could have an impact on, some of their approaches. Yeah. Yeah. Mhm. Right. Mhm. Great advice. Hey, Katie, just and this will be our last thing because I don't want to keep holding it, but obviously we all have strengths, we all have weaknesses. You talked about really identifying what you do that's a special talent. But what about when you find yourself continually hitting a wall in a particular area, whether it's data analysis or other things that may not be your strong suit? How are you able to identify what those areas are, and then how are you able to find people that can help you maybe in those areas strengthen up so you can achieve whatever you're looking to get done? Mm, mm, mm. Mm, mm, right, right. Mm, yeah. Mm, mm, mm. Yeah. Awesome. So sorry about that. Katie, thank you so much for your time. I know we're almost an hour deep into this conversation. Really insightful. Crystal, what did you think? Wonderful. Well, there's another good review for the Village website. Yes. Katie, thank you so much for your time. Oh, this is awesome. All right. You got it. Well, I know you only spoke with Crystal, but there are more ladies that are going to hear this. So thank you so much, Katie. Oh yeah, she'll love it. All right. Thank you so much. All right. See you guys. All right. Bye. All right. Another women's empowerment group in the books, guys. That was some phenomenal information. Hope everybody enjoyed thoroughly. Hope everybody got deep value out of that. Look forward to chatting with everybody soon. Thanks so much. Bye.